So as we've been talking to firms, there's really challenges that I think fall into four main buckets. And the first one is really just about staffing levels. Now, this has always been somewhat challenging for firms because, as you guys know, client placement volume is not always the same. Placements come in once a week, once a month. Volume fluctuates up and down, which has always made staffing a little bit tricky. It's been amplified significantly between court closures, clients putting things on hold, putting placements on hold, putting legal actions on hold. It's made it all just significantly more difficult to manage. And the other piece to think about going forward is how do you manage for the likely influx of volume that's going to come somewhere around Q1, Q2 as things open up significantly more. What we've seen with certain clients, even as they're opening up right now, is some firms will have brief periods where placements were significantly higher than they were pre-COVID, and then it has to fluctuate back down to normal. Second bucket is just profitability. As everyone knows, a lot of post-judgment remedies have been significantly reduced, and even pre-judgment. A lot of clients held suits for periods of time, courts were closed, things like that, which really hit revenue. And things like furloughs did reduce costs, but typically did not reduce costs proportionally to the revenue impact. There's so many actions that a firm still has to take, even if they can't take the actions that are the most profitable to them. Third bucket is quality and efficiency. And this is another area that's always been somewhat of a challenge for a lot of firms, but is a bigger challenge right now. A couple things that contribute to that is people are doing roles that they hadn't done before. With a lot of firms having to temporarily or permanently, in some cases, reduce staff, the staff that are remaining are having to do roles that they may not have traditionally done, which takes additional attorney involvement to ensure that the quality of the legal work that's coming out of it is up to the standard that it was before. And from an efficiency perspective, that also impacts it. Now, the other part that's made it even more challenging for many firms is at least a portion of their staff is working remotely. And managing and getting the same output from a remote workforce in many cases is somewhat more difficult than from an in-office workforce. The fourth bucket is really ties to kind of retraining, and this is in some ways similar to the quality problem that we talked about, in that people are learning roles that they hadn't previously had to do. And even for staff that may have been furloughed and brought back, if you're typically doing a task every day, all day, and you stop for a couple months and suddenly you're doing it again, it's hard to get the same, the same level of performance, and it takes more management time to ensure that you do. And even for people who may not have been furloughed, if you can't file a suit for a certain client for a few months, remembering the exact requirements and being able to perform that procedure, well again, takes management time and training. So, David, I know you've talked about a lot of specific examples that you've seen with your firm around these things. Do you want to tell the group a little bit about that?
Absolutely. What we're, and I'm sure a lot of other firms or everybody's probably looking for, is that ideal steady stream of placements where the cases are placed, every single month, and they go along through pre-judgment, through post-judgment, and obviously getting paid at the end is terrific. And it's really, with COVID-19, any thoughts of a steady stream seem to have gone completely out the window. Prior to that, it was never perfect, but now there really isn't a steady stream, especially with clients and allowing certain processes and not allowing certain processes, courts, being open, being closed, with the sheriffs, and all the state differences. We're a multi-state firm, so we've run into those, but they can even go down to, individual venue level or judge level. And it really has, when I see that you put down right on the first is staffing and unpredictable staffing requirements, it really comes to that we've been guessing. Obviously in April, we thought things were going to be perfectly fine by June, and then have found out that certainly didn't happen. And, as far as establishing staffing, we face those challenges where we furloughed people, and then people we've kept, we've even given overtime to, so that sort of showed us the up and down there. People we were hoping to have come back have in the meantime found other jobs. and then the idea of having to hire a new hire and do more training. I think you've really hit on, in your chart, everything that our firm has run into, and I, really can only imagine what smaller firms have run into, with any key people, not being around. But a lot of it has been as well the retraining and people taking on roles that they didn't have before, and trying to work through that on a day-to-day basis is difficult, and then predicting it going forward has really been a huge challenge.